Hi, I'm Chase Prober with Abacus CPAs. I'd like to thank you all for joining me for our prime orientation, going over the tax class for you guys today, going over as far as the differences between once you actually sign that lease and what changes you'll see on your taxes, but also going over the different types of business entities that you can run under as a lease owner operator. Of course, we're going to go into a little bit more detail on each one of those topics today, as well as cover who we are as a company and the types of services that we can provide for you guys. So I do thank you guys for tuning in to this orientation video. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we are a separate company from Prime. Abacus is a CPA firm. We've been on our own working in the transportation industry for 15 plus years now. Again, it's not just the tax return filing that we're able to do for drivers. We also have other services such as preparing quarterly estimates. We also have a variety of problem resolution services for clients of ours that have had tax troubles in the past, either filing or unable to pay tax liability. So again, we are a separate company from any of these trucking industries. We work on our own. We're able to file tax returns for anybody that is interested in our services. So as far as where you're able to find us, we are located on the second floor of the Millennium Building there in the Prime Terminal on campus. So if you guys head up the spiral staircase that's in the cafeteria there, we're just tucked away along that back wall right next to the movie theater. So while you guys are here in Springfield, if you do have any questions for us, our office is open from 8 to 5, and you can come in. You don't have to have an appointment to stop in and see somebody. Walk-ins are welcome. So just if you guys do have any questions while you are here in Springfield, please feel free to stop by and see us. Again, as far as what I was mentioning earlier, tax class is going to cover a lot of the tax information that you'll want to know as far as once you file that return, but also some of that business entity information as well. I'm going to start off by focusing mostly on the tax information. That takes up the bulk of this course here. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're going over the differences in your taxes once you become a lease owner operator. We're also going to cover as far as your deductible expenses and how to track those. But then we're also going to go over our services and the cost for those services. That way, again, you guys know what you're paying for when you go to file your return with Abacus. So biggest difference once you actually sign that tax return is you're viewed as a small business owner, and therefore you will be taxed like a small business owner. You will no longer be getting a W-2 at the end of the year. Your paychecks are no longer going to be looking like this, where you're going to see withholdings for FICA, Medicare, Social Security, federal income tax, state income tax, if it applies to you. No longer are you going to be seeing this with these withholdings coming out. You're going to be getting a 1099 miscellaneous from Prime at the end of the year. Now, one thing to note of whenever you get this form, it is just showing the gross income of your truck. It is not showing the funds that were direct deposited into your account. It is just the gross income figure. So that figure that you see on that tax document at the end of the year, that is not what Prime says you are making. That's just the gross income of your truck. All of the deductions that you're claiming throughout the year are going to be subtracted from that gross income figure to produce your net income, which is what you were taxed on. So throughout the year, with each dollar that you're making, you're building up tax liability. Your tax liability is, again, what you're paying for your income, but it's also going to include what's known as self-employment tax now that you are a self-employed small business owner. So with that, instead of having that employer withhold and make those payments for you out of each paycheck, it'll be up to you yourself to make payments in quarterly. You see here, this is the quarterly schedule for the IRS for making payments into them. Again, no longer is your employer going to be withholding each paycheck, so no longer are you going to have people making payments for you either, once a week or once every 2 weeks. It'll be paid in quarterly just 4 times throughout the year. One thing I always like to make note of whenever I'm pointing out this payment schedule is that the months are a little thrown off. Second quarter is just those 2 months there, and the fourth quarter, last 4 months of the year. I know most people think 12 months, 4 quarters. Each quarter is 3 months, but again, that is not the case. The IRS has come up with this schedule that'll be what we have to follow. Now, as far as the payment due dates are concerned, you see in each one of those boxes, there's payments due April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. Payments have to be made by those dates for that quarter. So end of the quarter comes on March 31st. You'll have 2 weeks to make the payment for that first quarter. Now, one other thing that we like to go over is what affects your tax rate. What is going to be put into your tax fund? What is going into your taxes? What are you going to be paying under? Now, there's 4 things that we look at whenever we look at tax rate. First and foremost, we look at where you live. That's going to determine whether or not you even have state income tax. That's one of those payments that you don't have to worry about if you don't have state income tax. So as far as your tax rate is concerned, if you don't have that payment to make, more than likely it is going to be lower. However, things can change as far as that percentage is concerned because of some of this other information that is included with it, such as the amount of money that you make. The amount of money that you make is going to determine your tax rate. So even though you may not have state income tax, you may have a high income to where that could offset that percentage. Last 2 things that we look at are your filing status and the number of dependents that you claim. Reason we take a look at your filing status is because that determines the standard deduction that you get from the IRS. The IRS issues a standard deduction for just filing a tax return, and they base that standard deduction off your filing status. If you're filing single, it's $6,300. If you're head of household, it's $9,300. If you're married filing joint, it's $12,600. So again, your filing status plays a big role as far as what that standard deduction amount is for you. Of course, we also take a look at the number of dependents that you're claiming because that's going to affect what type of child tax credit you may be getting back as well. So obviously, we want as much information as possible in order to help produce a more accurate tax rate for you. Now, as far as what we're often suggesting to drivers, anywhere between 20 to 30% out of each paycheck should be set aside solely for those taxes. Biggest chunk of what makes up that percentage is self-employment tax. Again, 20 to 30% is what we're suggesting out of each paycheck. 15% of that is self-employment tax. That's what covers Medicare and Social Security, so you'll still be paying in towards those, but it also takes into the account that you're owning your own business, you're making your own hours, but also that you're able to deduct a lot more as a self-employed owner-operator. Everything else in that 20 to 30% is just based off state and federal income tax. And again, that is if you even have state income tax. Again, there are 9 states in the union that don't have to worry about that state income tax payment. So if you live in one of those states, that is just one less payment that you have to make. Again, that 20 to 30% is based off those 4 things that we mentioned earlier: the amount of money that you make, where you live, your filing status, and your dependent information. Now, there are 3 different ways to make payments into the IRS each time at the end of the quarter comes. For the state options, most of them are going to be the same, but you may want to take a look at your own state to figure out as far as if there are any specific pieces of information that you need to know when making a state payment. Some states are different than others as far as the type of services they provide. Of course, if it ever does come up where you're having issues figuring out how to make a state payment, that is always one thing that you can contact us on. As far as anytime you're making a payment into the IRS, there's 3 different ways to do that. 2 of them are online. I pulled up here the IRS homepage, and you can see right there at the very top where we have all those arrows. You're just going to click that Payments tab anytime that you're ready to make a payment. Now, there are 2 options as far as online. One of them is paying directly out of a bank account. The other is paying with a debit or credit card. Either way, whenever you select these options, you're going to be directed to answer some security questions. They're going to ask maybe how you filed in a previous year, or they want you to provide information on how you may have filed in a previous year. But either way, with either one of these options, you do have to go through that process of verifying your identity. Each time, it's also going to ask you what type of payment that you're making in. For these quarterlies, they're going to be referred to as estimated tax payments, or 1040 ES payments. Either option works. They both mean the same thing, but just know that as far as whenever you are making these payments, they're going to ask you where to apply the payment to. Now, if I had to choose between one of these two options, most often I'm suggesting the bank account option because there are no additional service charges with this option. Whenever you're making payments with your bank account, you're simply providing your routing number, account number, and the amount of money that you're wanting to pay in, and that's what the IRS takes. If you pay with a debit or credit card, a third party processes that payment, so there's usually a service charge or a convenience fee associated with that payment. Again, with that bank account option, there is no additional service charge. They're simply taking out the amount of money that you're telling them to take out. I also know that a lot of drivers either have to have a separate bank account, either through their LLC or a different type of business entity, or they may just set up a separate tax account on their own. Either option is a great idea, but as long as you're having an account where you're sending your tax money to, you can make payments through that account. And again, there's no additional service charge associated with that. The third option that you have whenever making a payment into the IRS is using a payment voucher to send in a check or money order. There is both a payment voucher at the state and federal level, but we suggest sending in the vouchers with these payments because that's answering those questions that you would have online. It shows where the money's going to, who's sending the money in, and that way the IRS knows where to direct the payment, who's making the payment, and so on and so forth. Again, this is just an example federal voucher. This is an example state voucher for the state of Missouri, so that way you guys kind of know what they look like. These can be found anywhere online. You can simply Google and get these payment vouchers if you need them. Of course, if you're having any issues, this is always something that you can contact us on, to where we can get these vouchers sent out to you either through fax or email, or even snail mail if you're giving us enough advance notice. So as long as you contact us and let us know to send out one of these vouchers, you can send these in with your payment each time you're choosing to make that payment. So from there, I like to move on to deductible expenses. Really, anytime that you're asking yourself if something is deductible or not, these are the three questions that you'll have to ask yourself. Is it ordinary for your line of work? Is it necessary for your line of work? And are you spending your own money on it? I usually don't advise people to try and Google and find answers to if an item is deductible or not, because you can get a wide variety of answers. Really, you should ask yourself these three questions. If you're able to come up with yes on each one of these, then you know that you can claim it on your tax return at the end of the year. Now, I know that last question, did I spend my own money on it, is kind of an easy one, but that simply means that if you're reimbursed for anything, it is no longer deductible. That money is no longer coming out of your pocket. It is being reimbursed. So things like a part that's under warranty, or for example, your truck or trailer washes, these are all items that could be reimbursed and are no longer deductible for you. However, that just means most everything else is probably fair game for you, again, as long as it's meeting that ordinary and necessary to the line of work. So some items we're already able to track through your settlement each and every week. Things like your fuel, your truck payment, again, all ordinary and necessary. The truck doesn't run without fuel. Truck doesn't run, you don't have a business. Therefore, fuel is ordinary and necessary. And again, you're paying money for it each and every time, so we know it's deductible. Now, as far as any expenses that are coming out of your own pocket that are cash or debit or credit items, those do not show up on your expense report each and every time. So these are actually items that we have you report on a driver cash expense record. This is what the driver cash expense record looks like. You should have one of these in each one of your folders. This, again, is what we use to divide up categories. That way, you know, as far as where to put these items that you're purchasing, and we know as far as how to deduct them whenever we're preparing the tax return. Now, as far as some of the items that are on there, you see that there are toll scales, again, things that are ordinary and necessary. But at the very top there, you see we have these spots highlighted to where we have you fill them out to know where these funds are coming from. We have you list your name, your truck number, and then that dates included category is very important. That way we know the time frame in which these expenses incurred. We ask that drivers send these in to us monthly, so most drivers are just going to write the month for the expenses, or they may provide the days to just give us a little bit further detail as far as what time period they're sending the expense record in for. You also see just above that, there's options for sending these back into us. There's an email address, a fax number, and a lot of drivers nowadays are using the Prime app to send these expenses into us. That way we can get them reported, and it's a real easy job as far as getting this expense record filled out and then sent back into us monthly. Now again, some of the items on here are already kind of self-explanatory as far as ordinary and necessary goes. Office supplies. You need pens, pencils, paper, things to help you keep your records. Whatever you're keeping your receipts in, that also counts as an office supply for you. Safety items, cones, gloves. Again, items that you're going to need as far as while you're out on the road that are ordinary and necessary to your line of work. Communication tools. Your cell phone bill. Your cell phone is being used to contact a dispatcher, to contact road assistants, to contact us with any questions. You're also using the Prime app on that cell phone. So even items such as your cell phone can be used as a deduction. Recruiting and advertising is also one of the items on that expense record there. This means anything with the Prime logo or your company logo can be deducted. Anything with the Prime logo is because you're actually leasing that truck through Prime. Prime is helping you secure the loads, but also that could be used as a referral tool for you as well. A Prime hat or t-shirt could be worn at a truck stop, and a driver could inquire about your job with Prime, and that way you could refer that driver and achieve a referral bonus with Prime. So that Prime t-shirt, hat, whatever you may have, could be used as an advertising and a recruiting tool. But of course, the same thing applies to your business as well. If you have a business logo on items, that can be used to get your name out there. That way, you're advancing your business, you're building a client base, and overall improving the quality of your business. Now, some of the items, as I mentioned, do show up on your settlement. Items that are on your settlement, you do not have to include on this cash expense record. So, for example, the fuel and your oil and additives. Most of the time, these items are going to be placed on your COM data card. They get tracked on the settlement. We don't have to worry about listing those costs on this cash expense record. Only in that scenario where you're paying with cash or debit or credit card will you need to include that expense on one of these cash expense records. As I mentioned earlier, some items you're getting reimbursed for. For example, your trailer washes. Those will be tracked through your settlement. You won't have to worry about listing them on here. But truck washes are also included with that category. Truck washes are not often reimbursed, so any of those expenses that you have at a truck wash should be included on this driver cash expense record. Repairs are another item that are occasionally going to be listed on this expense record, but not always. It's always going to depend on the situation. Again, if it's a part that's under warranty, it's getting reimbursed. We also see that sometimes Prime may split the bill where they may pay for a portion of that expense, whereas the rest of that expense is coming out of your own pocket. Again, you only need to list what you're paying for, not what Prime is paying for, or not as what's showing up on your settlement. Other expense items that are on that cash expense record, laundry. Now, laundry is one of the few items that you don't have to have a receipt for because even the IRS understands that it's a coin-operated machine, and most of the time you're not going to get a receipt for that. But one suggestion that we like to make is the purchase of a receipt book. This is just another tool that you can use to keep track of your expenses, but you can also cut yourself a blank receipt out of that receipt book. That is just another way that you can keep track of those expenses. So each time you see that you have a laundry expense, you can write yourself a blank check knowing that you won't get a receipt from that laundromat. Showers are also in that same category. Showers are most often purchased with points. Those points are accrued through your fuel purchases. So we can't double count the expenses, both the fuel purchase and the shower purchase. So if you are using a point system, do not need to include the cost of those showers on there. Again, only if you're paying for it with cash or debit or credit card. Bank and ATM fees are also tax deductible for you. Again, this is another one of those items that you don't always get a receipt for. Sometimes those ATM machines run out of paper, so that's another one of those instances in which a receipt book can be handy for you. It is always important to note that this is just for the amount of money that you're being charged for that withdrawal. So it's not the total cost of the withdrawal, just that service charge that you're being charged at that ATM, typically anywhere in that $3 to $5 range. But this also may include, for example, Western Union fees if you're having to transfer funds back home. Other items that are on this cash expense record that we will make sure that we want to get included, your days away from home. Days away from home is one of those important things that we have to have on here each and every month, because this is how we deduct your per diem for you at the end of the year. Your per diem is what you get for being an over-the-road truck driver and covers the cost of your meals, personal hygiene items such as soap, shampoo, shaving cream, and others, but also includes the cost of your over-the-counter medications as well. The daily limit that you have as far as deducting is $63 a day. Only 80% of that, though, is deductible. So it comes out to a daily average of $50.40 that you're able to deduct for each day that you're out on the road. Again, you're going to be asked to send these in to us monthly, so that's usually the first question that we have on those expense records is the number of days that you're out on the road for the month. One thing that makes this easy is we know that we have a certain cap limit for the number of days in that particular month. So at the most, we know to see 31, but we also know that in September, the most is going to be 30, or in February, the most is either going to be 28 or 29, depending on the year. But it also helps as far as providing us with an accurate number because, for example, in that month of September, you may go home for Labor Day weekend. If you're home for 3 days, we know 30 days at the most, minus those 3 days, the number is going to be 27 that you're reporting on that cash expense record. Lumpers are another thing that shows up on your settlement. However, we do want you to keep track of those on these driver cash expense records. Most often what we are seeing is drivers are getting these lumper fees prepaid, they're sent in advance, and some drivers either don't get the correct amount of money in that first advance, or some drivers have advance limits to where they can only get a certain amount of money each week. So we have you keep track of your lumper fees on these cash expense records in case there are any possible errors that are associated with those advance limits, or if the correct amount of money isn't forwarded to you in advance. So we have you keep track of them on here. That way at the end of the year, we know we have an accurate figure. One of the other items that are listed on these cash expense records are motels. Basically, the one exception that comes with motels is just not while you're on vacation. Now, if you have a long layover or if your truck is in the shop overnight, of course, the cost of a motel is just another one of those expenses that will be ordinary, necessary, and paid for out of your own pocket. Equipment is another one of those categories on the cash expense record. It's right there on the top row. One important thing to note about this section is it contains a wide variety of materials. It is both inside and outside the truck, so it could be anything and everything from padlocks for the back of the trailer, chains for the tires, load locks, but also things like a GPS, dash cam, CB radio. And this also includes a lot of that material that will be inside of the bunk. For example, bedding, mattress, pillows, pillowcases, bed sheets. You don't have a bedroom there on the truck. You have to make do. You have to sleep somewhere. So all of those items are deductible for you. Same thing goes for whenever it comes to cooking. Again, the IRS doesn't expect you to eat at a truck stop 3 times a day for your meals. You will be doing some grocery shopping. So with that, you're going to have places to put your groceries, but also things to cook that food with. So this could be your refrigerator, Ziploc bags, Tupperware, but also crock pot, microwave, rice cooker, plates, utensils, napkins. All of those items could possibly be landing under this equipment and operating supplies category. Now, the last section that I want to talk about briefly is the miscellaneous section there in the bottom right-hand corner of those cash expense records. Really, this section is on there for if you make any purchases that you are uncertain if they are deductible or not, or you're uncertain as far as what category they need to be placed under, please write it down under this miscellaneous section. That way we at least know that that transaction took place. Now, I'm going to say your first instinct should be to Ask yourself those three questions. Is it ordinary? Is it necessary? Did you pay for it out of your own pocket? But if you're unable to get an answer after asking yourself those three questions, that should be one of those instances in which you give our office a call. That way we can help get that answer for you. Now, if you're filling one of these out late at night, our phone lines are down. Again, this is another one of those situations in which you'll at least want to write that expense down. That way we know that it did take place. So again, the big three questions that you'll want to ask yourself in determining if an item is deductible or not are these three questions here. Is it ordinary? Is it necessary? And did you pay for it out of your own pocket? Now, onto our services. Here's how we help. With our services, we're able to charge your truck for the amount of $7.50 per week. I realize my numbers up here have not been updated yet, but that amount is now for 2017, $7.50 per week, comes out to an annual total of $400 for the year. Those charges cover one federal and one state filing, and also cover everything for the personal end and for your business as well. It's all covered under those prepaid charges. Now, the cost of the return may go up if we do have to do any additional filings for you. For example, again, the cost only covers one of those state returns. So if you do have multiple state returns to file, we will have to charge for that additional paperwork. But there are also other papers that the IRS charges for, such as filing for a home office or for a personal vehicle. Now, this also is a discounted rate that we offer to prime drivers. So if you ever do leave prime, we still can prepare your tax return, though the cost may be different based off, again, not being a prime driver anymore. Now, I've also attached this page, this Abacus prepay schedule that shows as far as what we're charging your truck weekly. If you guys take a look, you see as far as when we get that paperwork, when it goes to payroll, when those charges will start. Again, you see what we charge annually and our weekly charge on there as well. But for that additional payment and for number of weeks section, if you do not join our services the first week of the year, which by and large most of the clients will not be, this lets you know as far as what we will charge to get you to that $400 mark by the end of the year. So it all depends as far as when you're signing up to use our services. Again, you'll just follow that chart to the left and then move over to that additional payment and for number of weeks to know what we'll charge on top of that $7.50 a week charge in order to get you to that $400 mark by the end of the year. Again, this is the form that we will need to have filled out in order for us to start that truck charge payment to get you signed up for our services, asking for some basic personal and contact information. That way we can get you set up here on our end, and that way we can get you contacted later on down the road to collect some other information, such as filing status, number of dependents. That way we already have all that information on file before we go to start working on your tax return. Now, one other thing that I do need to talk about that's on that sign-up sheet right there is our other service for quarterly estimates. Now, this is an additional service that we charge $50 per quarter for whenever we prepare these estimates. What a lot of drivers are going to use these estimates for is to compare what we're telling them to save versus what they already have saved up. So, for example, if we send out a Qualcomm saying that you should pay in $2,000 for a quarter, we're hoping that you have somewhere close to that $2,000 mark saved up already. Now, one nice thing about this service is you can sign up for it anytime and you can cancel it at any time. So if you guys are looking to sign up today, really all we need is to have you put an X or a check mark in that box below where it's asking for your personal and contact information. But just know that if you're not doing that today, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're missing out on that service. Really, you could sign up for it at any time. If you guys are not signed up for it and want to later on down the road, all you have to do is contact our office. If you sign up today and decide later on down the road that you no longer need those services, again, all you'll have to do is contact our office. We can easily make the changes on our end. As I mentioned earlier, you are only going to be charged for the quarters that we prepare these estimates for you. So you see it is $50 per quarter, but we are only charging that $50 for whenever we send out that estimate to you. We do not pre-bill that out. We only make that charge whenever we actually send that estimate out to you. So As I like to go over before I move on to that business entity portion, 3 biggest keys that I have for you guys is 1, saving that 20 to 30% out of each paycheck weekly. Again, this is just what we suggest to you guys. That way, we know that you have that money saved up. You can make that payment at the end of the quarter, and then hopefully by the end of the year, you've already paid in what you need to, and all you have to do is file your tax return. At the very least, we want to get you close to where if there is a tax bill whenever we go to file, it's a much smaller figure than if you hadn't paid anything at all throughout the year. Another thing that I always like to go over is, again, recording those cash expenses into us. We're able to track that fuel, the truck payments, all that through the settlement, but that's not all your deductions. You're going to be spending a lot of money out there on the road, and the only way to account for all of it is to keep the receipts and to turn in those cash expense records into us each month. Last thing I always like to go over is to come to us with any questions. We can be reached by phone, by email, or during an office visit. If you're in the Prime terminal there in Springfield, please let us know any way we can help you guys. Really, that's one of the biggest things I like to go over in these orientation classes is just asking questions. You're running your own business now. We don't expect you to know everything about your taxes or about running your own business, but that's why we are here. We are here to help you run your business. We are here to help you with your taxes. So anytime that you have a question, comment, or concern, please let us know. That way we are getting that issue resolved sooner rather than later. So with that, I'd like to move on to the next portion of this presentation, which is on business entities. What we like to do is try to help choose the right entity for you and your business. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be going over some of the differences between an LLC and a sole proprietorship, but we'll also cover some of the other types of business entities that you can run under and some of the details that you'll need to know if you choose to go those routes. So first and foremost, I like to go over the sole proprietorship option. With this option, you're signing the lease under your own name and your own social security number. Really, it's pretty minimalistic. Once you sign that lease, it's just like anything else. You're ready to go. You'll provide your bank account information to Prime, and you can start driving right away. Now, one big key with that is, with that sole proprietorship, with the lease being signed under your own name and social, that also means that you're taking on the liability of that vehicle as well. Now, if you're wanting to separate the liability from you and your business, that is what the single member LLC is for. It creates separation between you and your business. It's going to separate your assets from the business's assets. It's going to separate your bank account from the business's bank account, to where, again, you have that separation between you and your business. So, single member LLCs, they are disregarded tax entities. You do not have to file an extra tax return simply for having an LLC, and you're not going to be charged anything extra for on your taxes for that LLC. The LLC that we create for drivers that are signing up for that service with us, we set up here in the state of Missouri, but they are not being charged Missouri state taxes unless they are actually a Missouri resident. So regardless if you have a Texas address or a Florida address or New Hampshire or wherever, with this Missouri LLC, you do not have to worry about filing a Missouri state tax return. Now, as I mentioned, there is a little bit of liability protection in this LLC by creating that separation, but as far as how much protection you would have to contact an attorney for, unfortunately, we cannot answer any legal questions because we are not lawyers. So if that does happen to come up, please contact an attorney. That way you know the level of protection you and your business have. Now, as I mentioned earlier, separation between your bank accounts and the business's bank account are important. You will have to create a business bank account with this LLC. To set up your business bank account, you can go to the bank of your choice. So if it's a bank that you've used before, you can go there. Or if you're looking to set up, an entirely new account with a nationwide bank such as Chase or Bank of America or Wells Fargo, you will have a set of paperwork that you need to take to that bank or send to that bank to get that account set up. The bank will want to know your business's employer identification number, and will also need to see the information that's on your articles of organization in order to get that account created. Now, As I mentioned, the LLC is filed here in the state of Missouri, but again, you are only required to file a Missouri tax return if you are a Missouri resident. We ask for 3 names whenever turning in that blue page for your LLC application. Reason we ask for 3 names is in case one of your first 2 options is taken, we do have fallback options. So if a name is taken, we will try those other names. There are not going to be 3 names associated with your business. We're just going in order to see which one is going to be used first. Now, the state of Missouri does ask for a physical address for the business just so they know where that business is based out of. Again, if it is a Texas address, it'll be a Missouri LLC based out of the state of Texas or wherever you may reside. The LLCs take anywhere from 2 to 24 hours to get set up, so they do come back to us in a relatively timely fashion. As long as we get that paperwork, that's when that clock starts. Now, there are some things that can hold up that process. You actually need to pass your drug test, pass your sleep apnea test, or at least take your sleep apnea test before we can get that set up. You have to be cleared in Prime system, so sometimes that can be one of those things that delays the process, but otherwise, 2 to 24 hours to get these set up. Now, cost of the LLC is all based off whether or not you're using us for your tax services. At the very bottom, it asks you the option of paying with a debit or credit card or charging the funds through your truck. Most drivers are going to go through the truck because we were able to defer those payments out over 10 weeks. If we go with a debit or credit card, it does have to be taken out all at once. Now, cost as far as if you're using our tax services with the LLC, it's $350 total. But again, out over 10 weeks, that's $35 a week. With that, we don't charge to renew because you are one of our clients, so that is one of the discounts that we offer. So we will automatically renew that LLC for you. However, if you're not using our tax services, we do charge for the renewal on that LLC, which is $150, and the filing fee is $450 total, coming out to $45 out over 10 weeks. Again, the LLC page is what we will need to have signed and filled out in order to get started on that process. So that blue page is what we will need to have signed and filled out in order to get started on that LLC filing for you. Now, as I mentioned, there are different types of entities that you can run under. Partnerships are one of those options. They are different from single member LLCs because, again, it is 2 members instead of a single member LLC. But really the biggest difference between a partnership and the other types of business entities is that you do have to file a separate tax return for that partnership. That partnership tax return is going to show the split of the income between the 2 drivers in that partnership, whether it's a 50-50 split or 60-40 or however it may come out. But that partnership return has to be filed before you can file your individual tax returns. That partnership return shows the split of the income. That income is then what you will report on your individual returns. So again, that has to be completed first before you can even start to worry about your individual tax returns. Now, the other option that we have are for corporations. Now, as I like to say, we wait to incorporate. Corporations are typically not for drivers signing their first lease solely because they are costly to maintain. Corporations have to file separate tax returns known as 1120S. They have to post payroll taxes. They have to create tax documents. Again, a lot more that goes into simply filing one tax return. So corporations are costly to maintain. That is really our biggest concern with those that are starting their first lease, just them and their truck. They may not have the funds necessary for that corporation. Now, incorporating can always be done at a later date. Things that we look for, though, whenever it comes to determining whether or not a corporation is right for you, though, we will look at as far as when you're finishing leases, but we also look to see if you have multiple employees, and we also want to see if a certain level of income is there. We typically like to see net income of around $80,000, not just for 1 year, but for multiple years, in order to help determine if a corporation is the right move for you or not. So, again, in review, there are different types of business entities that you can run under. As far as which one is right for you is solely up to you. Again, with that sole proprietorship, you're signing under your own name and social, but don't have the separation between you and the liability of the truck. With a single member LLC, there's no additional filing that has to be made, and you have that separation creating a little bit of protection for yourself. Again, there are different types of business entities that you can run under. So if you do have any questions for us, please just let us know. Again, that is just another one of those things that you can contact us on for help. And again, if you do need help with setting up a single member LLC, that is one of those additional services that we can provide for you. Now, as I mentioned earlier at the start of the presentation, we also have problem resolution services for those that have had previous troubles with the IRS, either in not filing or not making payments into the IRS. So we have a whole problem resolution department to where if you have fallen behind, we can help get you back on track using a variety of services that we provide for you. Again, when contacting Abacus, please do not hesitate to call our office. Please do not hesitate to visit the Millennium Building. Let us know. Just know that if you are calling our office, you will be sent to the first available representative. Now, this is just a customer service representative that you will be contacting. It is not a CPA. So keep that in mind. If you do have any complicated tax questions, they may be contacting an accountant for help, or they may have to transfer you to an accountant to help get your questions answered. But either way, we also want to make sure that we're getting those questions answered. So again, this is another one of those reasons that you should not hesitate to call, because either that customer service representative that you first get can help you answer a simple question if you have one, or if it is more complicated, we can always get somebody to help in answering that question for you. Now, if you're only wanting to contact one person, that may complicate things for you. This is a team effort here to where you may have to speak with multiple people in order to get a single tax return filed. So just know that if you are asking for just a single representative, this may extend your wait time as far as getting that return filed or getting a refund kicked back out to you. Now, one last thing that I want to go over with you guys is as far as sending your information out to you. Now, easily the safest way to do that now for us is through Abacus Access. We are no longer able to send out tax returns via email. We have to send it through this safe and secure portal. So if you are wanting to access some of these files digitally, whether they be a tax return or LLC paperwork, it has to be sent through Abacus Access. So as far as getting this application on your phone or at your home, wherever you may be, you'll want to download the NetClient CS application. This is actually what we use Abacus Access through. Now, you can either set up an account yourself and then provide that information to us at a later date, or we can assist you in getting one of these account setups to where, again, if you need to access your information digitally, you still can. You see some of the instructions that I have here as far as getting that application downloaded, but we also have instructions as far as getting these files accessed either on a smartphone, tablet, whatever device you may be using. So as far as sending information into us, this could be either a tax document or cash expense records or possibly even previous tax returns that you're needing to send in to us. So if you are sending photos into us through the NetClient CS application, you'll want to open up your application and select File Exchange. From there, you'll want to go to the very bottom where it says Upload Your Files. You can see previous documents that you may have uploaded to us. So you can also check to see if you've already sent in a file to us or not, or what you've already sent in to us to know if you need to include other documents with what you're about to send in or not. And then you'll also want to select that plus sign in the top right-hand corner. From there, you can either select the camera option to where you can take a photo, or if you've already taken a photo of the document, you can pull it directly out of your photo library. From there, you can take a photo or, again, select one out of your library to where, again, those files are being sent directly to us, and we are then receiving them on our end to where that's either helping us in filing the tax return or knowing how you may have filed in a previous year, whatever information you're sending in to us. So, as far as everything that I have for you guys today, that's everything in that packet there. As I always like to go over again, saving 20 to 30% out of each paycheck and making those payments quarterly is always going to be helpful as far as running your business. We are able to track some of those deductible expenses through your settlement each and every week, but anything that you're paying for out of your own pocket, cash, debit, credit, check, money order, has to be reported on one of those cash expense records. Again, we ask for that monthly, and there are a variety of ways that you can turn those into us. Lastly, you always want to contact us with any of your questions. Again, there's no reason to hesitate in asking us a question. Please, if something comes up, call us, email us, visit the office. Either way, please let us know if you do have any questions. So that's all I have for you guys today. I thank you for tuning in. I thank you for listening. Again, if you guys do have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact our prime office or our main office here in Springfield. So if you do have any questions for us, do not hesitate to ask. Other than that, that is all the information I have for you. I thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.